Hey, welcome to the Mid-Week Talkthrough edition of Young Gun. My name is Dimitri Ravanis. Our guest today is former Dallas Cowboys coach Dave Campo. He will join us in just a moment. First, though, I want to tell you about our friends at Graffiti. They're the ones that make it possible for Lauren and I to do this show for you each and every week. By now, you know the deal, right? Graffiti is one of the coolest high-end cocktail bars in all of Cary. But on Sunday, they are the place to watch NFL football. 19 screens, specials on whiskey pours, specials on beer, weekly prizes as well. Plus, they're always keeping axe throwing going. So if you have a significant other that isn't as into football, Graffiti is the perfect place to go. Special bourbon pours at $10, $9, and $8 all day long while you're watching football on Sundays. Graffiti in Cary is just one of the coolest places around. The art is always changing, and we hope you go and support them because they support us. It is Graffiti, 158 East Cedar Street in downtown Cary. All right, so my guest this week is the former head coach of the Dallas Cowboys, also spent time as an assistant in Cleveland, Jacksonville, Dallas, and on a number of college staffs. Dave Campo, thank you so much for taking the time to join me today.
Yeah, this is my pleasure, Dimitri. I appreciate people that do things for the league and talk about, their teams and those kind of things. So this is easy for me.
Well, I wanted to tap into your experience today on a number of issues that, that Bryce and the Panthers do intersect on. But let's start with just you are hired as the head coach of a team and you are told that this is a full-on reboot. We are bringing a rookie quarterback along. We are coming out of whatever period we were in. When you were with the Cowboys, it was coming out of those Super Bowl runs. With the Panthers, it was we're done going 8-8 every season, and we're hitting that full reboot. Tell me about the decision-making you have to do to make sure you're up for this challenge.
Well, first of all, of course, when I took over the Cowboys, I had been with them for 9 years. Mm-hmm. And so in some ways it was just business as usual from the standpoint that, I understood the workings. I understood Jerry's interaction with the coaching staff. I understood all of those things. And the one thing about coaching that is prevalent in all of us, we all think we can get it done regardless of what the issues are.
Right.
So when I took over the job, I knew we were in a transition period because we'd lost all of the top guys. Emmett was at the end of his career. Michael Irvin had just been hurt the year before and he was done. So, and Aikman obviously got hurt early in the season. So that was the start of it. But I will say this, it was an unusual situation. And I think Jerry Jones is much better now than he was at that time, but he was actively involved in a lot of things, not the on-field coaching. He never came in and said, hey, we should be doing this or doing that. But he was involved in all of the draft picks. And to be honest with you, I'm not sure that he studied as much as he needed to during that period of time. So it was very difficult. And then the decision that he made to go with Quincy Carter in training camp, I knew at that point, that was 3 years in, and I knew that I had to win that year. And that was very difficult because I told him at that time, he's not ready, but they made that decision and the rest is history.
Yeah. I'm glad you brought up the experience working with Jerry Jones because there was a report that came out this week that the Panthers are simplifying the playbook for BryceYoung at the request of Dave Tepper. That is... We on this podcast have this theory that Dave Tepper's only goal in owning the Carolina Panthers is for you to know he understands football, right? I don't think that at this point, any of us in North Carolina think he is Jerry Jones level of meddlesome, but you lived through it. Maybe I'm wrong. Tell me your experience about dealing with an owner like that when you're trying to start a new culture for the team.
Well, it was a little difficult because, he had come out and said he wanted to be part of the Sox, the Jocks, and the whole works. And he also said that 500 other people could coach the Cowboys. So I started out in a tough situation, although he's probably right with the guys we had in the early 90s. It's the owner's prerogative to be involved. And I think, when an owner looks and sees that there's a lot of discipline mistakes on the football team. And I think when you look at the Panthers, I think they have a decent roster, but they've made too many mistakes. The fumbles, turnovers, penalties, those kind of things. And I think the owner probably has stepped in and said, hey, look, let's simplify things and let's let the guys just play a little bit. Again, I don't know that he's telling coach to do everything, but I think he does have a say in it, and rightfully so. He owns the football team.
Do you, when you're in that situation, now removed from it, you can sit there and you on your couch, me in my office, and you can very plainly say, rightfully so, he owns the football team. In the moment, though, did you feel that way, or were you frustrated and you felt like he was in the way?
Well, like I said, I knew Jerry, and I knew what he was involved with. I never had the feeling that the coaching part of it and the decision part of it, which is a little bit what you just said, that Mr. Tepper is involved in. He never really said, hey, you need to do this or that from the coaching standpoint. The only frustration I had a little bit was in the draft and, some of those kind of things, because, that is the lifeline for the football team is making sure you've got guys on the field that you trust and you go with. And that's the only issue I had. So I probably would have been a little frustrated if he started coming in and saying, look, you need to run a sweep here or a read option.
Yeah.
That was our domain.
There's been some speculation recently that, with the first pick of the draft, maybe Frank Reich was not as all in on BryceYoung as Scott Fitterer, the GM, and Dave Tepper, the owner, were. You talk about having some frustration with the draft. Tell me a little bit from a coaching standpoint, what it is you understand the second that you are overruled either by an owner, GM, or whatever. How does your role change when it turns out you're not getting the guy you wanted? The example that we've used a lot here is that, Hugh Jackson, for all of his failings as a head coach, was a very good offensive coordinator, was very outspoken in Cincinnati that he wanted Colin Kaepernick. He thought he could do a lot with that skill set, but the pick before, they take Andy Dalton instead. And so he has said publicly, like, at that point, my job was to forget Colin existed and draw up a playbook for Andy Dalton. And they did, and they had a lot of success. It doesn't feel like they've done that here in Carolina.
Well, first of all, that's absolutely right. I think once you have your team, you have your team. And I think that it's a little frustrating when that first part happens. But in reality, all of us feel like we can fit the scheme to the player. The thing that's disappointing about it in ways is if you're a good head football coach, you know what you want your team to look like. You know what fits your people. And so when you don't get the person that you want, that's the frustrating part. But at the same time, you have no choice. Your responsibility is to give that team a chance to win. And when you don't, you're out of there, and then it's out of the way. When I look at BryceYoung, for example, I loved BryceYoung when he came out. I actually feel like he's a legitimate number one pick. So, from that standpoint, I think the Carolina Panthers are in good shape, because when the problem that you have was when you have the first pick in the draft, you're not coming to a very good football team.
Right.
That's the nature of the business in the National Football. If you're in the top 10, but especially if you're in the bottom 5, the top 5, you're not getting a very good situation. And so I liken this to where the Jaguars are. When that first year, when Trevor Lawrence was here in Jacksonville, it was a struggle, 1-15. And when we had Troy Aikman as a rookie quarterback back with the Cowboys, we were 1-15. So, I think that the biggest thing is you have to fit the scheme to your guy and let him progress. And when I watch Bryce, he can make all the throws. He can scramble. He can throw on the run, all those things. But other than Thielen and a couple of other guys, he doesn't have the surrounding yet. And I think Jacksonville, for example, has improved that. They're a better football team all the way through the roster. So I think that's the biggest thing that Carolina has to do. You got to give them a couple of years to get the guys around them that it takes to win.
So I want to remind people listening and watching that not only did Dave spend some time with the Jaguars as an assistant, he also has retired to Jacksonville. So help us out with something that we have heard a lot, and I talked to a lot of people and nobody has seen it yet. We keep hearing that DJChark is capable of being Bryce's number one guy. Like this last game, he had some great effort catches, but overall, we're still waiting to see, is he really a number one option? What do you think as you watched him with the Jaguars?
Well, first of all, he was right at the end there when I came back to Jacksonville. So I didn't see him a lot. The year that I saw him, he struggled. And that's, kind of why they kind of let him get away, I think, and he has talent. He has the ability to make big catches and those kind of things. The one thing I didn't see with him when he was here was a little bit of the consistency from play to play to play.
And that's what we're seeing here right now.
Yeah. And I think that may be him. And I think that the guys that were making those decisions for the Jaguars probably saw that and were not willing to, give him the big money that he deserves. So a lot of people said he should be a number one, but in reality, on your ball club, on the Carolina ball club, Thielen's number one.
Yeah.
He's got to do enough in a secondary role because teams are going to start trying to take Thielen away. And that's hard to do because he's an outstanding player. So for him to be, what you might think he should be, he's got to start stepping up. And I'm not sure that he's done that to this point from what I've seen. And again, I haven't watched every football game, but I've watched a couple of them.
Yeah. So it's interesting. You mentioned that Thielen is the number one right now. Clearly, Bryce has some comfort with that is the veteran I can trust. I also picked up pretty early on, Bryce feels very comfortable with Jonathan Mingo, and that might be a matter of both played in the SEC or familiar with each other, whatever the case may be. How much of your job as a coach is to establish who it is we are going to, who our number one option is on these patterns, and how much is your job paying attention to who is the quarterback most comfortable with and then redesigning things around that?
Well, first of all, the playbook is the playbook. So they have a playbook and the plays are designed to go 1, 2, 3. They're not necessarily designed to go to Mingo or go to Thielen. It really comes down to kind of what the defense gives you. But at the same time, when you have a comfort level with somebody, you try to put that guy into positions that you think attack the defenses that you're seeing on the other football team. So that's what they try to do. And again, I do a lot of stuff with 1010XL here in Jacksonville, the radio station. When we talk about the guys, the one thing that you see is you have to keep your receivers happy. So,
right.
They're a different breed.
Yeah.
I coached DBs my whole career prior to being a head coach and a coordinator, and corners are a different breed. You got to make sure that they're put into positions to make plays because they're so outgoing and in such a tough position. Well, receivers are in the same position. So in Jacksonville, for example, Ridley might catch 8 balls one day, but then all of a sudden the next week, Kirk catches 8 balls.
Yeah.
So you do scheme things to get guys the football. And so that's something that is there. But when it comes down to when you're getting pressure on you and you know where your number one guy is, you have a tendency as a quarterback to go there. And I think that's part of it with Thielen. But at the same time, the guy's got to get open. There was a game here in Jacksonville a couple of weeks ago where I felt that Trevor went to Ridley too many times because he had such confidence in him and it didn't work out.
Yeah.
You have to spread the wealth and keep those guys happy.
Speaking of keeping guys happy, this is where we'll wrap because this is some real head coach kind of stuff that those of us that have not worked in the game probably can't understand. You are leading a team that is starting a new era. You're leading a team where the understanding is it's not about this year, it's about 3 years, 5 years from now. How do you, or what is it that you say to those veterans, the Adam Thielens, who's used to being in the playoffs, the Miles Sanders, who came over from a team that was just in the Super Bowl? What is it you say to them to keep them on board with the plan when it's not the version of the NFL, the version of professional football they've experienced?
Well, I can give you an example. My last year with the Cowboys, it was truly when Quincy came in, and this is not a knock on Quincy, it just happens. It's Quincy. He's a rookie quarterback. It was really a rebuilding situation.
Yeah.
We got to the point where we had to, let's get these young guys in and let's go forward. I was pretty sure it wasn't going to be me, but I knew that that's the direction it was going.
Yeah.
So, Emmett came in the paper about 6 games in or so, and he went in the paper and he said, "Hey, I didn't sign up for a rebuild."
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I brought him in, and Emmett knew he'd made a mistake. He brought his playbook with him. He thought I was going to let him go, which I was not going to do. But my comment to him was exactly what the comment was to the team. Your job is not to make a decision on the way the team is going. Your job is to perform. That's what you're being paid for. And when you say things like that in the media, number one, it doesn't make you look good, but it also doesn't make the team look very good, which you should not be. You should be worried about everybody else in this room, not just yourself. And so my answer to that question is, guys, we're getting ready to play. We can be a good football team, but we cannot do it when we're fumbling the ball, when we're throwing interceptions, when we're offsides and doing all the penalties that they've been involved with. Let's just look within yourself and take care of your responsibility, and we'll win some games here. I don't know how many we'll win, but I guarantee you we're building. We're going to do something here that a lot of you are going to be involved with 2 or 3 years down the road. And I think that's the approach that you have to take. It's hard when a guy comes in like Thielen that's been used to winning. I understand that. It's hard for a coach that's used to winning. I went through it. We won a lot of games in the 90s. So, when I look at the Carolina Panthers, it does not surprise me that they're where they're at. But the one thing I will say this for Doug Peterson in Jacksonville, calm, cool, and collected. And I think Reich is the same way. I think he's good for the football team because whether you win or lose, you stay on the same plane and you look forward to the next one.
Before I let you go, given what your role was in Dallas before becoming the head coach, how much advice has Coach Prime sought from you in his new life?
Yeah. Well, Prime, let me tell you something. He didn't coach Prime very much, because he was his own guy. He takes, listen, the one thing about him was there were 2 things. Three things really. Number one, he never blamed anybody but himself. And I wasn't sure, at first because he was so flamboyant and out front.
He was Dion when you got
and I'll tell you what, whenever anything went wrong, he said, "Hey, don't blame the coaches, blame us. We're out here playing." Okay, but that was one thing. But number 2, he was very competitive. But number 3, he studied. He's a smart guy. And the one thing he probably took from me was more scheme and that type of thing, because he studied everything. He knew who he was playing against. He knew what they were trying to do. He studied all kinds of film. And so, that part of it, and remember, I was a coordinator at that time. I wasn't the secondary coach. Mike Zimmer coached him. And I think Mike did a good job because it's different coaching a guy like that. You let him do some things, but at the same time, you give him you give him accountability. I can remember one thing, and I know I'm probably going too long.
No, it's okay.
I can remember one thing when he gave up a pass in a critical situation, and I was in the press box, and Zimmer was on the phone, and here's how you coach Dion. I'm screaming at Zimmer. He can't, he's getting paid money. He can't give up that kind of a pass, blah, 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 blah. Zimmer has fed up with me. He takes the headset off. He says, "Here," and he hands it to Dion. I've just been screaming for a minute. And as soon as Dion got the phone, I said, "Now, Dion, you got to be in the right spot there. We can't let that one happen. You're too good a football player." So, Dion probably got some things from scheme-wise, but, he's a smart guy and he knows football. There's no question.
All right, Dave Campo, former head coach of the Dallas Cowboys, coordinator and secondary coach all over the league in college football as well. Dave, thank you so much, man. I appreciate your insight.
No problem, and good luck to the Panthers. I know you're part of them now, being in the city, and go Jaguars as well.